I just wanted to say that the NHPPA, Sean Buckley and his beautiful wife are on their way across Canada as we speak to bring this to Ottawa. And the NHPPA is actually actively asking for testimonials. If you go to the nhppa.org website, you can record if you have personal stories about how natural health products have helped you and or somebody you love. Please share it. Somebody's going to hear it and it's going to make a difference, like these beautiful people. So now I turn this over to David Stefan, my new hero and friend. Please come up and answer questions and say whatever you can to make a big difference, because you do.
Wow.
Yeah, what Sean Buckley's doing right now is really quite important. I had the opportunity to go and see him last week in Grand Prairie, where they had a mini health show there and had about 150 people out, and he presented, he spoke on the issues that are taking place currently in relation to the natural health product regulations and how it's incredibly detrimental to our well-being, to our access to natural health products, how at best the cost of the products are all going to go up significantly, and at worst we're going to see a lot of the products, if not the majority of the products, actually disappear off the marketplace. And that's not that hard to fathom when we take a look at other Commonwealth nations that have implemented these types of regulations back in the late 90s and early 2000s. There was a time in Australia where the health food store shelves were really quite barren because it just wasn't feasible for natural health companies to even put their products into that marketplace. And so that's where we're going if we don't create change. And so that's what Sean Buckley's currently doing. And so I applaud him for what he's doing there. And he's doing a fantastic job, him and his wife. And he's going to present to Parliament the health charter, which, if approved and if it goes through, will allow for natural health products to fall under more of a kind of a food type category, which is where they really should be, versus under the drug model, which is where they definitely shouldn't be. So I want to express my appreciation for everybody coming out tonight, and I'm sure a few of you have questions, if not all of you, and so fire away. And there are no bad questions, by the way. Actually, the more comfortable the question is, the better it is. So just let it rip. That light is blinding. All right. Any questions? Any questions in relation to what we're doing? I know that, like, we did a tour, a 36-day tour back in the late spring, and we discussed both the natural health products issues, but there was a lot of questions that came up in relation to what we're doing, how our products correlate with medications that people may be on for potential or particular mood issues, you know, whether that's depression or anxiety, you know, things like schizophrenia even. And so these are topics that are relevant, I think, to everybody here. Yes, go ahead.
Based on your family's history, do you know of anybody like south of the border who's experienced the same kind of, like, maybe even like the details are a little bit different, but kind of gone through what you've gone through and are trying to do the same thing, and I don't know, I guess being met with the same roadblocks?
In the US?
Yeah.
Okay, so we manufacture both in Canada and in the US right now, so that we're not putting our eggs all in one basket. We have had no problems in the US. They went through a major natural health battle back in the 90s, where the US government, the FDA, was attempting to apply these types of draconian regulations like what Health Canada currently is doing. And the people stood up and they pushed back. It seems that they're a little more feisty. I don't know if that has anything to do with the amount of guns they have, but anyways. So the government relinquished, and they came up with what was known as déchet labeling. So all that's required in the US is labeling requirements. Now that's not to say that, you know, there's been some fantastic therapeutic remedies that, you know, they've been attacked for it, because there are those types of situations that I know of that have arisen in the US, but it's a little more few and far between comparatively to, you know, on a per capita basis compared to what's happening here in Canada. And so you really have to stick your head up high to have them notice you, and you get the whack-a-mole there. So things are better in the States. They're not perfect, not even close, but they're definitely better than what we've seen here in Canada. And you can actually go get natural health products there for quite a bit cheaper because they don't have any of the licensing that's being applied to these products. The companies don't have to jump through the hoops, and you can get natural health products that have much better dosing because Health Canada has largely limited the dosing recommendations that we can make on products here in Canada so as to prevent them from being able to help people, so that people would then go and spread the word and say, hey, you got to try this, it's working, it's fantastic. So really Health Canada's done a fantastic job at minimizing or really eliminating the competition to Big Pharma. Good question, by the way, thank you. Yes, back there. Yeah, that's you.
Has the company experienced any more sort of these clandestine situations, like backdoor things where they're trying to hinder you anymore right now, or is it sort of quieted down, so to speak?
I was asked something similar to that when I was up with Sean Buckley last week in Grand Prairie. And, we haven't gone 5 years in our total existence, and we've been around since 1996. We haven't gone 5 years without having an encounter, an attack on us, and it's come from multiple angles. So initially, after the first study came out in October of 2000, Health Canada came right in immediately. And so that was, basically year 4 into what we were doing, and all of a sudden Health Canada has become our friends, and they stayed around for 10 years. It was a 10-year battle with them. And then finally things settled down, and then my son passed away. And they saw it as a fantastic opportunity to really exploit the death of my son and the false narrative surrounding it. That if you recall the media surrounding that, which was everywhere, everybody knew who we were in Canada. We were probably the most hated couple, unless you lived in a bubble and you didn't watch the news. And I applaud you for that if you fall into that realm where you don't watch the news. But if you were watching the news, you knew who we were. And it wasn't just in Canada, it was actually all across the world, and it was there was more views taking place in the States than there was in Canada because there's a higher population base. And it was a fantastic tabloid-style story, because who goes and feeds their children through an eyedropper and feeds them, smoothies with hot peppers and radish and all this stuff? Like, it was just crazy stuff. And so what they did with that, it was a roundabout way, and we got to see how it worked its way into the courtroom. Even though it had no relevance and Sean Buckley opposed it vehemently, the judge allowed it to happen, where they started to go down a line of questioning when I was up on the stand surrounding True Hope. And that just opened the Pandora's box for the media to now just jump on that, and now this became a True Hope story. And it was there to try to slander True Hope. That somehow, because my son, all my children get the True Hope supplements so that they can be healthy, that because my son was getting that, now the narrative is shifting to they were trying to treat bacterial meningitis with the True Hope products. It makes no sense whatsoever, right? At all. But that's what they were doing now. So they were doing an attack on True Hope, and then when that finally came to a close, which was, they had to finally drop the charges, and I'll just kind of give you a bit of a teaser here. In June of 2021, June 21st, 2021, the medical examiner that falsified my son's autopsy report, he ended up on his own criminal charges. He took off in 2018 when we started to raise the flag on the corruption that was taking place there. And we exposed it. We went really bold, and we were hoping that they would actually try to sue us over it so that we could get our day in court and litigate these matters of fact, showing that he did in fact falsify the autopsy report. So we were not holding back on that at all. And we went really public, and we were even advertising. We were paying advertisements on Facebook over these certain geographical regions that they were living in to highlight, these are your neighbors. These are the people that you're working with, and they're crooks. And so he took off in 2018, when a month after we really opened the doors there and started to expose it. He ended up down in Indiana. And then he ended up on credential fraud investigation in both the state of Indiana and the state of Kansas. and he ended up on his own criminal charges. So June 21st, 2021, he's on his own criminal charges. They're scheduled. June 22nd, 2021, the Crown phones us and finally drops the charges, even though they were going for an unprecedented third trial. We were now 10 years into the battle and they were still pushing. So once that dropped, then all of a sudden Health Canada rears its ugly head again a year later, and they come and say, hey, you can't have those 35 medical journal publications on your website. These are 35 medical journal publications coming from universities around the world. Most of the research was government funded from different governments around the world. And these are studies showing that, people, like the last study was actually on PMS, showing that women with PMS, that their symptoms can be largely reduced through the use of these vitamins and minerals. Or that the people in Christchurch, New Zealand, when the earthquake happened, the 7.0 in 2011, how those that took these supplements did far better than their contemporaries, everyone around them, because they had the nutrition to help them deal with traumatic situations. And everybody was negatively impacted by, it's actually 2 earthquakes that happened within a few months of each other, and basically countless aftershocks as well. So, these are the types of studies that are made available, including bipolar, the effects on ADHD and autism and et cetera, that were available to the common person who would go onto our website and they're trying to make a decision to see, is this something that I should be using? And here's these scientific studies showing the actual verified effects that these supplements are having, and Health Canada comes in and says, you can't have those on your website because we don't approve of them. We don't approve of them, of those supplements for that use. Okay, well, and then they said you also have to remove your testimonials of people's real life experience, sharing their real life experience, and Health Canada says you can't have that on. And so that finally came to a head after we battled back and forth for the better part of a year. Finally, by May of 2023, we had to remove those off our website. And so we deal with them a little bit differently rather than just going quiet. The first film was actually being, you saw snippets of it, The People versus Dave and Colette Stephan, which is available, by the way, on matadorfilms.ca. Matadorfilms.ca, free of charge. You can see, this is actually the prequel to it. This is the backstory to the first documentary that was produced, which is The People versus Dave and Colette Stephan. But you can see both this film and The People versus Dave and Colette Stephan and Uninformed Consent and Love in the Time of COVID. All great films that Todd Michael Harris has produced. He's made them free of charge, and he just asks that if you like what you see and that you want to support more great films coming out, just donate.
Sorry, matador.ca.
Matadorfilms.ca. matadorfilms.ca. So Health Canada came back and attacked us again on that. And now we've got these other regulations. So like I said, we have not gone 5 years of just having a peaceful time of being able to make these products available without being hindered in one way or another, being attacked in really egregious ways. So Health Canada is definitely, the government, anyways. I don't need to say it anymore, but you get it. Yes?
What's your background in herbology and nutrition?
Sorry, what's my background
What's your
in?
background? I mean, I see all the problems where it is.
Perfect. Okay, so I'll sum up the story real quick because it is touched on it in the film. But basically, my father was in a desperate position where he was watching the rest of his family fall apart after watching what had happened with his father-in-law, and then 15 years later with his wife of 22 years, and then watching his 9 other children going down the same road. And so really what was interesting, and you brought up box remedy and the intuition and whatnot, my father found himself, after exhausting every resource available to him within the medical system, found himself in a desperate situation of just pleading and praying and fasting and meditating on what the answer was, seeking for some kind of divine inspiration that would lead him in the right direction. And as he persisted in that, that's when he met David Hardy, and David Hardy had more of a background in biology in formulating feed for hogs across Western Canada and the Western United States. And they dealt with similar type issues, that would be classified in essence as mental health issues in the pigs, and found that proper balanced nutrition was the answer, that it would correct these conditions. And so that was where the light bulb moment came for my father. And he'd already tried a bunch of stuff like Tahitian noni juice and magnetic therapy and all this stuff for Joe, and it didn't work. And so he just had this spiritual confirmation as soon as David Hardy said, you know, this is what we did with the hogs. My father knew it was the answer, and it's a real good thing that he had that spiritual confirmation, because they went down to a health food store and grabbed a bunch of different natural health products, vitamins and mineral products, and it didn't work. And so he could have easily just given up and said, oh, well, that vitamins and minerals don't work either. And so because he'd had that spiritual confirmation, you know, the resonance from his head to his toes, he just knew that it was the answer. They persisted with it, and after, well, it's November of 1995, by January of 1996, they had 4 products land from the US that were chelated, or they were colloidal minerals. It was 4 different products, and they put Joe on it, and within 5 days, Joe reported that it was like a fog lifted, and you can now see what was right and wrong. So that was the beginning of the story. Now, a crisis would arise about a year into this when the first study was taking place on these 4 different products, and people's symptoms began to return in the study, even though they had a major symptom reduction really quickly, just like we saw with Joe and anybody else who tried it. People began to revert. And it wasn't just happening in the study out of the University of Calgary, it was also happening in our own home and within the community with everybody who had come to rely on these 4 different products. And what they found, the University of Calgary did an analysis on the 4 products and found that the colloidal mineral supplement varied in the mineral levels depending upon the batch. So it's a good thing that we got a good batch the first time that produced the results that we were looking for, but the next batch didn't cut it. So then we tried something else, and I remember the amount of different products that were coming through our house during that time. And that's when my father, David Hardy, said, you know, we just need to produce our own all-in-one supplement that gets the results that we're looking for. And so they did, and they thought that it was going to be kind of a guinea pig situation with a lot of testing over the years to make sure it's all refined. And they did a lot of research, they did a significant amount of praying into this to make sure that they got it right. And what's interesting is that the first version that they came out with is still the same version that you get today at the health food store. The same 36 active nutrients in the same balance, the same ratios, same proportions. It's just that we've learned over the years how to chelate it and micronize it so that it becomes much more bioavailable, so that rather than taking 48 capsules a day for depression, you can now take 4 to 8 capsules per day and get the same results, right? So we just made it that much more bioavailable by really mimicking what was happening within nature, because the minerals in nature under ideal conditions will be broke down in the soil. They'll be micronized by organisms like worms. Anybody's worked with worm castings here? Right? You know that the worms will actually grind everything up and make it more available to the plants, but also it introduces microbial activity, and that microbial activity will assist with the minerals actually turning into an organic form, where now there's just not a rock form mineral, it's an organic form because it's bound to an organic molecule, which allows for it to uptake into the plants, and the plants thrive off of that. So that's what happens in nature under ideal conditions when you're not using things like Roundup that sterilize the soil. And so we mimic that, and that's why our supplements are able to actually create the results that we're looking for.
That's actually very good, because some companies, they have the same product, kept some of the little spoons, which is your measuring thing, and then years later, the same product, but the spoon suddenly got so big because they want to sell more. You went the other way.
Exactly. We reduced the capsule count. We didn't want to have, people taking 48 capsules per day were probably down to 2 meals a day and 1 meal of capsules, right? It just wasn't very convenient for them, right? 48 capsules a day was a lot. And I remember taking that myself, right? And I did it. And a lot of other people were doing it too, because it was so life-changing. They were willing to take that inconvenient amount of capsules. But we weren't happy with it, so we continued to refine it. And I think we're on our probably 5th or 6th generation, same formula, but just 5th or 6th generation of modifying it to make it more bioavailable by micronizing and chelating it better.
It's a different topic, but...
Yeah, it's not along the lines of homeopathy for sure.
Right.
And yeah, in relation to opium, homeopathic opium, even though it'll help bring people out of comas, You're not allowed to have that in Canada, you're not allowed to have that in Germany, I'm sure you're not allowed to have that in any country,
Well, there's
but it's
another-
therapeutic. Exactly, there's no physical trace of it, it's energetic. So no, we're not along the lines of energetic that way, albeit I'm sure there is elements in relation to the intentions
Right.
that we have, that we're putting into it, that also probably plays into why it's also so effective. We can't definitely neglect that concept, right? Because our hearts are in this. All we're doing is trying to share the blessing that blessed our lives, that have allowed us to have healthy, thriving families, whereas we didn't have a hope of that before. We're just trying to share that with other people. And so there's a lot of love behind this as well. Yeah.
We need love in the world. for
Oh,
sure.
we definitely need love in the world. I'm not sure if there's anything that's more valuable than love. Yes?
Hi. Has this been used with autism at all? And if so, is the association like BC Autism open to your product?
Okay, sorry, the last part about BC autism.
Yeah, would they be open to your product?
Would BC autism be open to the product? I'll cover that one first, I'll work our way backwards. Probably not. Right? The problem is that many of these organizations are either arm's length, they're either directly attached to the government, or they're arm's length from the pharmaceutical industry, and we've noticed that. We've actually got the majority of our opposition initially was coming from, like the Schizophrenic Society of Ontario and whatnot, and it was really working as a front to bring in these people that were adamantly opposed to us, and even going so far in the early 2000s to write a book about us and whatnot, to do anti-True Hope seminars, which is interesting. So here my dad and David Hardy are traveling around saying, hey, this is what we're finding, it's phenomenal, and they're renting university halls and doing these, and then meanwhile, you have these other organizations that are doing the exact opposite, and they're doing anti-True Hope rallies, meetings and stuff like that. So there was a lot of opposition, and unfortunately, oftentimes it was through different organizations like that. But has this been used with autism? Yes. Louis Mamadrona, a researcher out of the University of Saskatchewan, him and his team did a study back, I think around 2008. And what they did is they did a comparative analysis between the use of Empower Plus on children with autism versus standard medical treatments. Okay, so they had two different groups in the study, and by the time that they concluded the study, they had one good thing to say about the standard medical treatments for autism, and this is what they had to say, is that it didn't cost the parents anything because it's covered by our socialized medicine. Okay, that was the only good thing they had to say about the standard medical treatments. Now, what they had to say about the Empower Plus is that they saw a significant reduction in antisocial behaviors, self-injurious behaviors, and just a total reduction in symptoms across the board in relation to autism. So yes, there is a study on it, a pretty good study, I'd say. Could we use more studies? That'd be fantastic. Unfortunately, most of the studies are covered by government grants, and the government isn't so willing to fund these types of studies. So it's been a real uphill battle for researchers like Bonnie Kaplan, and you saw Julia Ruckledge up on the screen, to get the grants necessary to do the studies. That's a major hurdle, and it always has been a hurdle for them. Even though the Alberta government initially, they funded $544,000 into a double-blind placebo-controlled trial, but that's the one that Health Canada came in and shut down initially.
That's my question. How can they shut down a study?
That's already government funded.
It's a good question. How can they shut down a study? We live in a country that I don't think that we like to actually see it for what it is. That freedom is but an illusion at this point in time, and it's on a very tight leash, if you will. So unfortunately, that's what we saw. But after the court case was won in 2006, that's when we start seeing studies pop up again here in Canada, rather than just places like Harvard and University of Hawaii and whatnot, right? So, I saw a question back there. You still have a question?
Oh. Yeah, well, I wouldn't say a question, more of a pondering, because my family, and I'm 74, and I'm talking generations of Canadians in my family have suffered severely from bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, you name it, we had it, or still. However, I was always upset because of the government, because my father was a commanding officer, he was an intelligence officer, and he always said, don't trust the government. And that's from a long time ago, like even before World War II. So I know about the corruption, and one of the most corrupted parts of Canada is CBC. And it's sickening, including the courts, they're all in it. I mean, this is something that actually, that whole paradigm, I suppose, of deluding the people has been going on for centuries. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to say that, but because I've suffered so much, I've been in quite a few psychiatric hospitals, and I'm going to write a book on it, that's for sure, because it's pretty awful. Some of the things that I experienced and how I was treated, and as I was even treated socially because of the moniker as bipolar. So I had to hide myself in whatever ways you want to determine. But the prayer part, I got information given to me through prayer, and that to follow certain kinds of paths, which was all about herbal and more what the natives, because I grew up with natives. I mean, I went to school with them, I was involved with them, but it wasn't in a city, it was always out in remote places. And I will say, I have followed your father the whole 9 yards, the whole way, and I was so upset that I could not get what you've been producing in Canada. But then, of course, now it was only recently I found out through Lori that you guys finally won the court case, and I'm going to tell you I've started on that, and yeah, I've started. Well, it must be over. When is it you guys met and you started? A month and a half ago, and it is helping me so much. I just wake up and I cry because it seriously works. So no matter what other people say or think, Canada has always been deluded by the government. And I've known that all my life, and especially with my father in intelligence. And he was under the thumb because it was all about the royal families, and he was in the Navy, and you know, all this law that we have is all naval law, which is garbage. So I'm just saying, I'm glad you're on the path, and now I want to do everything in my power to get there and be on the path with you in whatever way I feel I can. And part of it, I kind of wondered if you had like a little handout with your donation, like I would like to donate.
Oh, to donate to Todd, who's producing the films?
No, I thought you were talking about True Hope and the donation. So Todd too, yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can donate to the NHPPA for their tour, right, to help ensure your continued access to natural health products. If you go on matadorfilms.ca and you watch those other films and you really like what you saw, just go ahead and donate there as well, so that he can continue to produce.
So I think she's asking what's the best way to support, to donate, would be to the donation for the,
In case you have to go back to court, you guys taking some
Yeah.
money?
Oh, well, hey, okay, so if you want, so this is where the beautiful exchange of value comes in.
Or continuing research
Yeah.
and anything that comes up.
So here's the best thing you can do. If you want money to flow our way, right,
Yeah.
is purchase the products, receive the benefits from consuming them, right? We receive the benefits of having the money that we can then produce more products and continue to ensure that we're able to move forward with other activities. And go and spread the word with other people as well, and share this film, being that it's free of charge. Now that you've seen it, you have access to it, share it with other people as well. Spread the word, because not only, I mean, you're talking about donating, which is a one-way transaction initially to us, and I'm saying, spread the word so that people are receiving the benefit, and as they're receiving the benefit,
Of course.
we're receiving a benefit, and it's so reciprocal. So that would be how I'd
Because I
advocate.
lost family through this illness too.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a miracle I'm still here anyway.
Well, I'm
And
glad you're here.
What your family had gone through, our family has been going through for generations. But, anyway, thank you. I'm grateful to Lori for.
I also want to say thank you to doing this, taking a tour, taking time to do this kind of thing for all of us, because we surely need it.
Yeah. You know, I appreciate that. You need to understand I'm really the benefactor here, and I'm not talking financially, right? Because I'm involved in a family-run business, and anybody who's been in family-run business, you know that it isn't always that smooth. So what keeps me fueled is the fact that I get to do this. I don't have to do it. I get to do this. I look forward to this because it fuels me up well beyond any financial remuneration. This is a blessing. So you're saying thank you to me, and I'm grateful that you're here because I had the opportunity to share a message that will likely impact your life or empower you to go and impact someone else's life. And that's what fuels me in all this. Thank you.
Well, without people like you, we'd be in dire straits. I mean, the judges, they all seem to be bought somehow. Like, how is it possible that, like the home invasion thing, right? Oh yeah, the guy that he can sue and the guy that tries to defend his home, like, what is going on? So people like you are the only people, like, this is the time when we have to stand up. I'm going to stand up. Because if we don't,
Well said. Very well said. You know, I'm going to misquote Gandhi because he never said it, but somebody paraphrased it. And it's be the change that you want to see in the world. So if you don't like corruption, be the antithesis of corruption, right? Be filled with virtue. Be filled with justice. Make sure that you're dealing with your fellow man uprightly. That's the best way to change a situation, because we're always pointing the finger and saying, that person's doing this, right? And they're being protected by the government. Why? Because there's a whole cohort of them in the government that has created a criminal organization that they first and foremost protect themselves, right? And they're running a double standard, where they'll criminalize the common man for doing one thing, and yet they're doing it. So example, here I get charged, me and my wife, and I wrongfully go to jail after a wrongful conviction. It was an absolute dirty trial. But in fact, Sean Buckley said that it was tied for the dirtiest trial he's ever dealt with. And the other trial that he dealt with was the Alberta Appeals Court, or the Federal Appeals Court that did the dirty on Trudeau. Those are the two dirtiest trials he's ever dealt with. And so here we get charged for failing to provide the necessaries of life. Now that's a pretty low charge. It's up to 5 years in jail. They've actually up to 10 now, but at the time it was 5 years. Compared to criminal negligence resulting in death. And oftentimes that's the charge that they'll try to apply to people and couple it with failing to provide the necessaries of life. So here, they charge us with that, with failing to provide necessaries of life. But in the same instance, the evidence comes out with a crystal clear case that Alberta Health Services had engaged in criminal negligence resulting in death, which is up to 25 years in jail, yet they didn't hold anybody responsible at Alberta Health Services. Now, you also saw that Health Canada performed these actions and they removed people's access to these supplements, over 3,000 Canadians, and they knew it was going to create a crisis, and they knew it was putting people in harm's way, and they were warned that it was putting people in harm's way. Ron Lejeunesse was actually warning Health Canada, saying, I know people that are going to suicide if you continue doing what you're doing. And then sure enough, by the time the trial comes around, he testifies to 2 suicides that he personally was aware of. Health Canada engaged in criminal negligence resulting in death, up to 25 years in jail. Yet, did you see any charges in those 2 instances against them? No, but yet they're willing to charge me and my wife knowingly using a falsified autopsy report so as to shift the narrative, right? So there's a double standard taking place. But it's really easy to point at that and say, hey. But if we want to see change, and we're going to stand up, and we're going to rise up, we need to be the antithesis of that corruption. We need to make sure that we are being upright and honest and true and virtuous with our fellow beings, and that rather than operating in the same spirit that they are, which is a spirit of hatred, because that's the only way they can do these things, is that we're operating out of the spirit of love.
Hallelujah.
Because if there was more love, we wouldn't see that corruption, would we? If love filled the halls of Health Canada, would we see them doing this to their fellow man? No, you wouldn't. And so we need to be that. We need to make sure that we first look at ourselves and that we change ourselves before we ever demand change from anybody else. So let us rise up and be that, and we will be a force to be reckoned with. And at minimum, we'll at least receive the benefits, and so will our families, from us changing. Even if it doesn't change anybody else in the world, we'll be the benefactors of it.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
That for me.
that's you.
All right. So when we were chatting, in regards to how great your beautiful product line, because it's not just the Empower Plus, you're also offering nascent iodine and some inositol and some Preminos, a whole breadth of things that address multitudes of issues. This is not limited to healing mental health issues.
This is just
Your
fundamental
sister shared
nutrition.
with me about the nascent iodine with thyroid and how that may help with infertility.
Okay.
What about Graves' disease?
Okay.
Hiroshima.
Perfect.
Hashimoto's.
Hashimoto's, yeah, not Hiroshima.
Not Hiroshima. Hashimoto's.
Hashimoto's, which it may have been somewhat of a result of Hiroshima.
You know, this is why I tie them together sometimes.
So I wish my sister was here, which you met
Yes.
just a couple hours ago. But she went and took her 3 children back. 3 children that she shouldn't have had because she was infertile. PCOS and hypothyroidism.
Wow.
And yet now, obviously fertile, she's had 3 babies, and no PCOS, and no hypothyroidism, and no medications for any of that, just proper supplementation, giving the body what it needs, the fundamental nutrients to allow it to correct these types of situations. So, yeah, let's talk about that, because we are seeing a major rise right now in Graves' disease and Hashimoto's. So autoimmune conditions associated with thyroid performance, right? And we're always told that autoimmune conditions are incurable, right? Just like when the doctor says, it's genetic, it means there's nothing we can do, but we can give you this treatment for the rest of your life, which will reduce the symptoms, but we can't correct it, right? So it's just a cop-out. So let's start off with just regular thyroid issues. Typically it's this. You take the Empower Plus, which has 37 ingredients now, active ingredients, fundamental nutrients. You have 16 minerals, 14 vitamins, 4 amino acids, and 3 antioxidants. And what you're going to find is there's a number of nutrients in there that help the thyroid to operate properly. Nutrients like magnesium, selenium, molybdenum, vitamin C, vitamin B2, B3, vitamin D. These are all crucial in ensuring that the thyroid is working well. But we know that the thyroid also needs iodine so as to produce T4 hormones. The number, the 4 actually represents the amount of atoms of iodine is in that hormone, hence T4. And then it downregulates to T3, and then T3 hormones regulate the metabolic rate of every single cell in your body. So if you've got metabolism issues, there's a good chance you're not producing enough T4 hormones and then down converting into T3 hormones. So when you combine the Empower Plus with all those companion nutrients, not only are you going to nourish your whole body and your brain, and you're going to find that you have better cognition and you have more resilience to stress, and that you're able to deal with these stressful situations in a much more calm and collect fashion, and that if you had any underlying mental health concerns, that they're going to dissipate. You're also nourishing the thyroid, and if you add iodine to it, that iodine is going to do far more than it would have been able to do by itself, even though iodine by itself can be quite powerful, especially in the form of nascent iodine, which is what we supply, which is basically pre-converted iodine into its atomic form so that the T4 hormones get produced quite easily without taxing the thyroid. Now, if somebody has Graves' or Hashimoto's, we deal with it the same across the board, which is interesting because one's hyper, one's hypo. And this is what we do. We say, don't take the iodine yet, but here, take the 4 to 6 capsules of Empower Plus per day. Take 1 heaping teaspoon of inositol 3 to 4 times per day, and the inositol helps correct the underlying issue with the thyroid. And we couple that with 400 micrograms of selenium, chelated selenium, by the way, per day. And we do that for 3 weeks. And just that alone, oftentimes, before we even have a chance that after 3 weeks we start to introduce the iodine, that's already generally created a major correction in the Hashimoto's or the Graves. But by the time that we get to the week 3 period, the individual with the Graves or Hashimoto's that wouldn't have been able to take the iodine beforehand because they can't handle it, their thyroid is incapable of handling it, and it actually agitates them, can now take it without those issues. And so I just want to share one example because I had the opportunity, I've had quite a few people reach out to me with it now, but I had the opportunity where there was a younger woman, 19 years old. Her father knows me, and he says, hey, my daughter's got this going on, and she's on meds, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and it's Graves. And so she has really elevated thyroxine levels. And so I give her the protocols. She gets tested every 6 weeks. And fortunately, we were coming up to basically week 5, so she's gonna have to test the next week. So I give her the protocols one day. The next day they go out and they get all these different supplements from the health food store. They get the Empower Plus, the inositol, they go get the chelated selenium, and then and they didn't get the iodine yet, so they got those 3 products. She starts the protocol. She gets tested 7 days later. The endocrinologist phones her and says, your thyroxine levels are normalized. So she reports this back to me. I say, okay, well, so what does that mean to you? She says, well, they're never normal. They're always elevated or extremely elevated. I said, wow. So we're talking 7 days, and you've already seen a significant turnaround. And so she continued on with it, and then got onto the iodine. And then this is the nature of man, for some reason. She gets well, and then she starts getting negligent on it, thinking that it's cured. No. You needed those nutrients all along, and you weren't getting them out of your food, so now when you go into that state of deficiency again, you go back into that state of dysfunction that now gets you a diagnosis for Graves. And so I've actually had that exact situation happen twice because I have a rep out of eastern states who phoned me one day with Graves. I didn't know she had Graves. Now she talked, a mile a minute, so fast, all the time. I'm like, oh boy, right, that's gonna be a challenge. You're a rep, you need to learn to listen a lot too, to respond to the needs of your clients, right? I'm like, okay, she's very excited about the job. Her heart's just a beautiful, beautiful woman. Her heart's in the right place, just a lovely person that I'm like, okay, we all come with our quirks. Hers is, she speaks a mile a minute. Well, we figured out what it was, is the fact that she had Graves and that she was operating at a really hyper level. And so she phones one day and says, hey, I just got out of the doctor's office and they said I need to remove my thyroid and they give me a prescription for this medication. My heart rate was sitting at about 170. I'm like, whoa, like you're like just resting. Yeah. I'm like, I can't get it up that high if I'm exercising a lot. Like 170? Like you're still alive, right? And so she says, what do I do? I said, well, okay. I said, what do you want to do? Well, I don't want to take the medications. I said, okay, good. Then don't take the medications, but here, do this. Gave her the protocol. 7 days later, she goes back to get the follow-up testing. She doesn't fill the prescription. The doctor says, wow, the medications are working for you, but we still need to remove your thyroid. And so she phones me, and she's all distraught again. And she's like, I didn't have the heart to tell him, well, actually, I didn't take the medications, but he says they're working well for me, but they still need to remove the thyroid. I said, okay, well, what do you want to do? Well, I don't want to remove the thyroid. I said, okay, good. Well, it seems to be working for you, and it's only been 1 week. Why don't you just continue on with it and see where it goes? Sure enough, it got better. I don't hear anything. And then about 8 months later, she phones me. And she says, my symptoms are coming back. I'm like, oh no, are you kidding me? Like, what, was this a placebo effect? Generally, that only lasts up to 3 months, possibly, but not with a situation like this. I'm like, why would it stop working? I'm like, okay, what are you taking? Well, nothing. Have you not been with me all along? I do trainings on a weekly basis. We have conversations in our team meetings. You missed the fundamentals here. This is basic fundamental nutrition that you need on a daily basis, regardless of a mental health condition or not. And by having it, you're going to thrive. And you just removed that fundamental nutrition that was ultimately why you end up with the dysfunction in the first place. So I wanted to take it in my head and beat it against a brick wall. And then I realized, wait, you did me a beautiful favor as well, though. You did yourself a disservice because now you're going through this again. But you just performed an AB scientific design. That's one of the designs that they'll actually use in studies, right? So she had her baseline. She was doing really bad. She got better to the point that she thought she was completely better, that she got off of everything, and she returned back to where she was, and then she got back on it to start getting it better again. And so it showed that it wasn't just a change in environment or change in life circumstances or whatever, that it was in fact the protocol. And so she herself became a case study by doing that, even though she didn't do it with that intent. But same type of situation, right? Going back to the nature of mankind, we tend to get apathetic when life gets a little comfortable and start to kind of slip up on things. So those are the protocols for Hashimoto's and Graves', and they work very, very well. I've seen where people had to do incredibly complicated things and really change up their diets and everything and jump through all sorts of hoops, but it's amazing when you just go to the fundamental nutrients that allow the body to thrive. And so I'll actually kind of sum this up real quickly here in relation to how they are the fundamental nutrients. So you have 4 classes of nutrients that your body absolutely needs. They're essential nutrients. 4 classes. Think of it, these aren't 4-legged chairs, these are 2-legged chairs, kind of. But think of it if you were sitting on a 4-legged chair and we removed one leg, could you balance on it? You bet you'd be balancing. It's dysfunctional, right? You're unstable. Think of that, metaphorically in life. You're unstable, okay? Get rid of another leg. Now you're really having to balance. Like you are legitimately, not everybody's gonna be able to do that, right? And then get rid of another leg and now it's like, some people could do it, but well, okay? All 4 legs work synergistically to support the whole. All 4 classes of nutrients work synergistically to support your body and make sure that everything is working appropriately. And what they are is omega fatty acids, amino acids, vitamins, minerals, right? So you have your 4 classes of nutrients that if you are deficient in any one of those, the other 3 classes won't be able to do their full job because they all rely on each other in various biochemical pathways within the body. So for example, we're working with mental health conditions. If somebody's consuming enough protein, so they're getting tryptophan out of the protein, and they're digesting it, by the way, because you have to digest it. It's not what you eat, it's what you absorb. So let's say that they're consuming protein and they're digesting it appropriately through all the enzymatic reactions that are happening, and they're getting the tryptophan absorbing into the bloodstream. That tryptophan is now the precursor of 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is a precursor to 5-hydroxytryptamine, which is also known as serotonin, which is also the precursor to melatonin. Okay, so people come to us with depression issues because they're not making enough serotonin. They also have sleep issues quite often, right? Because if you don't make enough serotonin, you likely will be making enough melatonin, okay? So in order to get that tryptophan, though, to convert into 5-hydroxytryptophan, it's not just a magical process. There's an enzyme reaction that happens that requires iron, methylfolate, vitamin C, D, and B3. 5 nutrients getting that enzyme to convert tryptophan into 5-hydroxytryptophan. Now, the conversion from 5-hydroxytryptophan to serotonin is quite easy. All it requires is P5P, or pyridoxine 5-phosphate, which is just activated B6. Okay? So we now see 6 vitamins and minerals necessary to take tryptophan and turn it into serotonin. Now, the same thing goes with tyrosine, another amino acid, converting into L-dopa and then dopamine. The same 6 vitamins and minerals necessary. So, if somebody's depressed and they go and get an SSRI, it's addressing the serotonin levels, but it's not addressing the dopamine levels, and there's a good chance that they're not going to be producing enough dopamine because it's the same ingredients other than the tyrosine versus tryptophan being the precursor. But the other 6 nutrients that they may have been deficient in that was preventing them from producing serotonin are the same 6 nutrients necessary. If they're deficient in them, they're not producing dopamine, which then also converts into norepinephrine and then epinephrine. So you end up with this breakdown. So just talking about the fundamental nutrients there, amino acids and vitamins and minerals, there's 3 classes right there just to produce dopamine, epinephrine, serotonin, and melatonin, right? So all of those. So you have to have those. But then omega fatty acids start playing into the whole process as well. That's supporting the whole system. And we're just talking so myopically. That's just 2 neurotransmitter pathways. We have so many pathways in the body that you see the same type of thing taking place. Nutrients working in synergy to produce different messenger molecules that are going to tell our body to tell our cells to do something. So that's those. The vitamins and minerals in the Empower Plus is what we're most deficient in, mainly the minerals, and that's why it has such a profound effect. Because we're not as deficient in amino acids. I'm not saying that we're not deficient in them, we're just not as deficient, and we're not as deficient in the omega fatty acids, but we are deficient, but just not as deficient. And that's why when we cover the greatest deficiency, we generate the greatest results. And that's why the Empower Plus is having the impact that it is, because we're addressing the mineral deficiency. We're putting back that missing 4th leg, and now you've got a stable chair. Then if you address the other nutrients as well, now you've got a solid chair that can handle a whole lot of load on it, right? And metaphorically speaking, when you're nutrited, you can handle a huge stress load. You're able to deal with it. It's a lot harder to break you down. So the same thing as that chair, the stronger those 4 legs are, the stronger it'll be, the more weight that can bear down on it. The stronger or the greater amount of nutrients that we have in those 4 classes, the stronger that we are mentally, spiritually, to be able to be more resilient. Now, the inositol I want to cover as well. The inositol provides the structural basis for the secondary messenger molecule in every cell of the body. So in layman's terms, it's allowing that cell to respond to first messenger molecules, which are known as neurotransmitters and hormones. So example, you may produce enough insulin, but if your cells don't respond, you'll end up with a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes, right? Insulin resistance. Your cells are resistant? No, your cells aren't communicating because they don't have the secondary messenger molecule in the cell. So inositol has been shown to be more effective than metformin in the correction of type 2 diabetes. Why? Because it's putting the right molecule into the cell to allow the cell to actually respond to insulin when it comes in contact with the cell. That's simple. But it's not just insulin that needs to communicate with the cells, your melatonin. So if you take inositol right before bed, the melatonin is more effective. If you take inositol during the day, you're going to find things like serotonin and the dopamine are going to work better, and so you're actually going to feel better. Your mood's going to be more regulated, right? So we kind of see the full circle there where we're helping with the production of hormones and neurotransmitters through the use of the amino acids and the vitamins and minerals, but then with the inositol, we're allowing the cells to actually adequately communicate with those neurotransmitters and hormones that we just produced. So we've gone right to the root of the nutrition that we need, that we're supposed to be getting out of our food. We're putting it back into you in a form that works, and the body takes care of itself in the thousands and thousands of ways that it knows how to do so, rather than us trying to just address, one symptom here and one symptom there. We go right to the root, allow the body to deal with it.
Wow, thank you. Anybody
That was awesome.
Yeah, it was good.
There's some brochures up
Yeah.
I'm kind of a geek. I'm not sure if you picked up on that yet.
Thanks, great.
I have a question with regards to research.
Yeah.
So you do research on your products. Do you do like cross supplement research to see what, what competitive supplements can be taken with your product? And if so, have you ever done that with Shilajit? And is your product compatible with Shilajit?
Our product is compatible with Shilajit, and if you so choose to use it, do it. In fact, I'm testing that out right now on a greater level right now than I've done before. I'm kind of the guinea pig myself, in the Canadian retail division, but we have a database that we established back in the late 90s, and it's become the largest mental health database in relation to the use of nutrition. And in fact, one of the medical journal publications was published based on an analysis coming out of, I think it was Stanford, who teamed up with Bonnie Kaplan. They analyzed our database to come up with the data to then publish research on our findings, because we are so meticulous with it, where somebody would phone us and they would give us their symptoms, they would give us their diagnosis, they'd give us the medications they're on, they'd give us how much coffee they're consuming. Like, we go through all of that and document it. And we would see what worked and what didn't work, and we were able to identify what herbs shouldn't be taken with Empower Plus, what herbs could be taken with Empower Plus, what medications, what the effects would be if they were combined with the Empower Plus, whether they need to be completely reduced off of, or have a level of caution, or there was no issue at all. And then the same thing with other nutritional supplements as well, that we were able to identify different patterns. So if somebody phoned us and they said, hey, I'm on this calcium supplement, okay, and they're taking it and they don't seem to be getting well, okay, well, it's one off, whatever. But then we start to see that there's another person and another person and another person, and they're all taking these calcium supplements, and we start to recognize, wait a minute, you can't take additional calcium unless it's in the same balance with the magnesium and phosphorus, and it's in a form that's bioavailable, otherwise it will actually conflict, and that even though they're taking more minerals, they're seeing less results. And so that's when we actually developed our own bone health product that had the same ratio of calcium, magnesium, phosphorus, plus a host of other ingredients, and it was chelated, so it's bioavailable, and that's why we produced that, so that those that wanted more calcium, because their doctor's saying take 1,200 milligrams of calcium and you're not getting that much out of Empire Plus, now they can take a form that complements versus conflicts. And so yes, we've done a tremendous amount in relation to that, because at the end of the day, especially when we're working with one-on-one with clients and they have severe mental health conditions, our end goal is to break through however it is to get them to a place where they've had success and that they're living well. And with that goal in mind, we've been able to identify some really great things in how and that apply across the board in relation to what can and can't be used with the Empower Plus.
Awesome.
So if I was to look up your database, what, do I just type in Empower, or?
If you want access to our database,
Yeah, or is it a database that people can go to?
well, this is a very encrypted database because
it's
this has
private.
personal medical information. We would go to jail if we so
I like that.
it's very, very encrypted. It has financial information, it has medical information, it has all sorts of stuff on there. So, no, but you can look at one of the studies that analyze the database, and you can find that on truehope.com.
I think she's looking, maybe like the pamphlets might guide you towards, like, say, a website where you can look at more information about different products or interactions.
Yeah, and so there's a lot of great, well, first of all, there's a lot of great information out there that you can grab. And then, yeah, if you're looking for more in-depth information, reach out to us. So the website that you go to in Canada is truehopecanada.com, and that's on all that material. You don't need to write it down. But if you're looking for the studies that Health Canada made us take down, if you're looking for testimonials that Health Canada made us take down, you can go to truehope.com, which is hosted out of the US. It has different products. Don't get confused by them, because they have different versions of Empower Plus.
But the testimonials and such are still there.
The testimonies are still there, but yeah, they have different versions of Empower Plus. Don't get mixed into that gauntlet. There's a marketing nightmare right now, and the principle that applies is that a confused client doesn't purchase. And so in Canada, we make sure that we streamline it and give you the very simple, basic nutrition that's going to work. We take out the guesswork, because there's versions of Empower Plus that are on that other website that I wouldn't put on the health food store shelves, because well, in the case of one, it's very, very powerful, but it's also unpredictable. So it's not something that I'd be comfortable playing around with, and we don't use it in our home, even though we have full access to it. We use the same version that you'll find on the health food store shelf at Lori's there, at Nurture by Nature.
Does that have anything to do with like the mainstream prescriptions in the States where, like, I think it, what is it, like Advil or something is like 3 times as powerful as what we have up here? Is that why it's like that?
Different regulations in the States that would allow for different dosing of medications, different concentrations, and then same with, obviously, with nutraceuticals as well, with the supplements. So yeah, there's going to be some large variances And I mean, you can see that in food, like the food that you can get down in the US, like you can get some real atrocious stuff that you can't get here in Canada. So, right, like with the high fructose corn syrup and just weird stuff in the can that sprays out with an aerosol can. And it's just some anyways. So it's a double-edged sword, right? It can be really good for the supplement industry down in the US where you can get higher concentrations of stuff, but you can also find some really nasty junk that nobody should ever put into their body. So, yeah.
Just curious, what would be the overall effect of someone who doesn't suffer from any of these symptoms that you described, and they were to take the product?
Great question. So what would be the effect if somebody didn't have any of these conditions, so they're generally healthy? So the first thing is, there's a good chance that if they went and took it, let's say they took 4 to 6 per day, they might not notice the overnight effect, right? And when I say overnight, really it's within a week or two, typically, that they're gonna see a marked result that's identifiable. And those around them will generally see it before that individual sees it. So there's a good chance that they won't see that. They can, but there's a good chance that they won't. But now it comes around cold and flu season, and all of a sudden they seem to be doing better than they traditionally would have year after year. And they're watching everyone around them, their contemporaries are sicker than they are, and they're thinking, okay, well, there's something there. And then they start to go through maybe a stressful situation. Maybe they suffer a loss, of a loved one. And they seem to do better than those around them, that they just are able to keep more positive, that they're able to feel their emotions, right? It doesn't make you numb to emotions, but that you're able to process emotions in a more appropriate way, in a more controlled fashion, that you're holding the reins, right? You start to realize, wow, like, I've dealt with that in the past, but I'm dealing with it better than now, or maybe agitation at work. And so all of a sudden you start to see that you're dealing with stress in a much better fashion. And maybe you're not losing, you're going off the handle as easy. And hopefully you're not prone to that anyways. But that type of thing. And so that's what people will generally recognize. And then they'll recognize eventually that, maybe their level of cognition has increased. Maybe their level of confidence has increased because that there's those subtle things that just continue to grow and grow as time goes on. But the whole body is nourished through this, right? This isn't a mental health supplement. This is just a proper nutritional supplement that also feeds the brain the nutrients that it needed all along to create those neurotransmitters so as to regulate thought processes and how we feel, right? So that's what you would normally anticipate. But there are some people, actually one individual who came to work with us, and he's still working with us today. He came on a year after I did. I've been with the company now 22 years. He came on, so he's been with us 21 years. The first thing that he noticed, well, there's 2 things that he noticed pretty quick. One, he came to us largely bald, right? This is 21 years ago. He came to us largely bald, and today he still has more hair now than he did when he came to us 21 years ago, because he actually started to regrow some hair. And I'm not sure if that was due to hair loss from stress, and that it helped deal with the stress, and so it provided the circumstances for him to start regrowing some hair. And then the second thing was, the way he communicated it, is that he had been living in a 2-story house his whole life, but he never realized the second floor was there until he got on the Empire Plus. That it's like it opened up a whole other level of mental capacity for him. So that's how he communicated those 2 things. And he was somebody that was generally healthy. He wouldn't have received a diagnosis for any mental health condition. So, yeah, and he's become quite a loyal and faithful individual, hence why he's been with us now for 21 years.
Thank you.
Yes?
Have you noticed, or through all these years of observing people and noticing what's going on when they use the products, do people drink less?
Oh, drink alcohol less.
Yeah, I'm talking alcohol.
Yeah, well that...
I have family, that's kind of what I grew up in, that was a problem.
Drinking can be a huge problem where there's mental health issues, where there's a prevalence of mental health issues in families. Oftentimes you'll see you'll see abuse of alcohol, or you'll see abuse of marijuana, right, to spike dopamine levels to self-medicate. Or you'll see, abuse of other substances. And so one of the medical journal publications was actually done on that, where what the unintended consequences of the studies was that they were seeing this repeat thing where those that were getting on the Empower Plus were also reducing off of things like cannabis, tobacco, and alcohol. And so Julia Ruckledge mentioned that in her TEDx talk there, that was the case. And so that became a medical journal publication in itself, showing that when you improve the reward circuitry in the brain, and that's what they were hypothesizing was taking place, which makes sense because, like I mentioned, the reward circuitry in relation to serotonin, dopamine, right? Those 6 nutrients, getting those amino acids to convert into those neurotransmitters, boom, you've got your reward circuitry working well. And so, yes, there's a reduction in that, and I can personally testify to that, right? I don't mind the odd organic beer here and there, especially in the summer, right? You're working out in the heat and whatnot, I'll have an organic beer. But with all that I went through, with 10 years of battle, cost us over $1 million to try to keep my wife and I out of jail, 2 trials, going for a 3rd trial, plus 3 appeals, and it was just this relentless battle, plus you're dealing with a situation over the loss of your son, and so right there, that's traumatic, plus you're losing your friends because they're looking at the news and believing CBC, and it just devastated every aspect of our lives, right? And what was interesting about that, going through that, well, first of all, I made sure that I was upping my nutrients, right? And I was making sure that I wasn't just physically nourished, but that I was also really drawing in prayer and whatnot, so that I was spiritually nourished, right? So I was really seeking out the Most High in all of this. And I found that those 2 things were absolutely necessary. And if I neglected either one of those, I was going into a really dark place really quick during those battles. But what was interesting throughout that time is I could go and have an organic beer. And did I want a second one? No. Do I see alcoholism in my family? Yeah, it's there. But I had full control of that. Why? Because it wasn't doing, if I had an organic beer, it wasn't doing for me what it would be doing in somebody else who was in a deficient state and weren't producing those reward chemicals. Whereas I was already topped off on my serotonin and dopamine and all that, naturally. So, if I touch that, it's like, right? Break my arm, completely severed it there. Well, the arm didn't sever, the muscle was there. The bone was completely severed and then broken 2 other places from a car accident where we got blown over in the wind. Anyways, that long story. But I used THC and CBD for the pain. And once again, did it do anything for me mentally? No. In fact, if anything, I stopped it early because I actually recognized that it was causing me to have a fog. And so I actually stopped, and I was like, after about 5 days, I'm bearing through the pain, right? Even though I'm in the sling for a long time as the bone's trying to fuse back together on its own without having to get, screws and plates and all that type of stuff in my arm. So, same thing. I've touched all of that stuff. It doesn't have the impact on me as it would on somebody who's deficient, or it doesn't have the impact on me as it would if I were to get off the Empower Plus and the other nutrients for, let's say, a few weeks or a month. And then if I was to touch it, it'd probably make me feel really good comparatively to where I was, and then I would want to self-medicate with it, whereas I'm in no position where it's even acting as a medication in that way mentally for me. So yes, I can testify that.
That's good news. I like to hear that because also the other question was, I have a family who, of course, they're on antidepressants, and so the worst time, whatever that means, we've already talked about that. So I think I'm more excited now to understand how the nutritional aspects work in the body and how it creates a reward system instead of using whether it's an antidepressant or alcohol or pot or whatever. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, there's a principle there, and this goes alongside with what we're doing. So we mentioned root cause, right? And fundamental nutrients. And there's a principle that's found in a quote from Henry David Thoreau. Some of you may have heard of him. He wrote Civil Disobedience. Probably became a little bit more of a popular book in 2020, and it should have. Anyways, before 2020, I was already reading his works, and they're just so philosophical and lovely. But he quotes, he says, for every 1,000 hacking at the leaves of evil, there's one who strikes the root. And so, you know, we live in a society where we're often tackling that which is fully visible rather than looking beyond and saying, what is causing that in the first place? Let's go there. Let's go a few layers deeper and let's address it there. And that will resolve all of these issues, right? And so, same thing. When you consume alcohol, you're dealing, and you're doing it as self-medication, you're only addressing the symptom temporarily. And unfortunately, the overall effect will be, you know, detrimental because it's having unintended consequences, right? Or if you're using marijuana chronically to self-medicate, the same thing. It's constricting blood flow to the prefrontal cortex of the brain, which is your logic and reasoning center, and you continue to do that and you're starving that area of oxygen, you will create that fog that I was able to identify myself where I'm not able to reason quite as well as I thought I would be able to. And fortunately, I was self-aware enough to say, I'm seeing this, and it's probably because my job requires me to be very self-aware and to be able to articulate very well. And if that's compromised, it's very noticeable. Like my ability to do what I'm doing right now would be compromised, and I'm very aware of that. So, you know, you have these unintended consequences by addressing just the visible leaves, if you will, rather than chasing it back down the branches, down the trunk of the tree, and go right to the root of it, and yeah, you address it there. Yes?
I have one more quick one. Your suppliers for your products, because you produce in Canada and the US, are they different suppliers, or are you able to cross-border deal with that? And does the company, obviously you've been dealing with, they must be the same for quite a amount of time. Are you confident that that's a good foundation to continue the product production?
Great question. Okay, so we get our supply from open market, and it just has to come in with certain criteria. Regulations have to be, like they provide C of A's, certificate of analysis, that type of thing, to show the purity and all that. So we're getting these minerals that are literally like, they call them pharmaceutical grade, and it's just the purity standard that has to be met for them to be usable. Now they're basically useless. If they're usable in the marketplace, they're useless because they're not in the right form. So we take those, we then take this pure source that is not therapeutic, and we put it through our processing and make it therapeutic. So we're not having anybody supply it to us in the form. We are creating the form. We've developed the technology over the years in relation to micronization and chelation.
So you get the raw, pure material, and then okay.
We get the raws and we do the magic to it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So initially we relied solely on other companies that were doing chelation and whatnot, and it was good. But, you know, we were able to get down to 32 capsules per day.
Yeah.
That's good, but it's not great. Then we started the micronization process. That took it down to 18 capsules per day. Then we developed our own chelation process and got it down to 15 capsules per day. And this is a therapeutic dose, by the way, not the maintenance dose. But then we continued on with that, and now, in essence, you know, that 4 to 8, you can go 9, whatever, if you want to go 3 capsules 3 times a day. And that's definitely going to produce the same results at 48 capsules of the same formula, just not processed the same. It will produce the same results that would have produced.
Thank you so much for coming this evening, folks. I'm actually celebrating our official 1-year anniversary next Saturday, October 22nd. At Nurture by Nature, we will be fully stocked with all of these beautiful products. And this sister's book is amazing. The autobiography, wow.